Hi, welcome to my channel, The Spiritual Hub. My name is Victoria Bedford. I am a spiritual teacher and spiritual reader, aiming to bring awareness to an unconscious world, aiming to bring healing and empowerment to unhealed people and people who don't feel empowered. And how do I feel that I can do this? Well, on my spiritual journey, I feel I can do this by bringing my stories, by bringing the stories of my healing, by bringing awarenesses to the things that we are unaware are affecting us. So if you don't or haven't already subscribed to my channel, do hit the follow button. It helps my channel so greatly and it helps me to continue to do what I love. Now, this video is going to be about the awakening process. What is an awakening? And how did the awakening affect me? Stay tuned. Welcome. So if you've come this far, you are wanting to understand what a spiritual awakening is, but you also are wanting to hear a little bit about my story, about my spiritual awakening. A spiritual awakening is a period of time, or can come from a period of time of chaos. This period of time can be from the loss of a loved one. It can be from the end of a job that you've been in for years. It can be in a breakup. It can be, and usually stems from something chaotic happening externally that leads you into a deep sense of depression. Now, of course, there is the other side where some people reach a spiritual awakening because they've had an epiphany. They've sat in their room and they have thought about things and suddenly a light bulb has gone off. Of course, awakenings can happen that way. There are other awakenings that can happen when people induce them, when people have realised they've been in a low sense of a lull and depression and anxiety for a long time and they want better. And what they can do then is they can bring on an awakening by starting to work on some things, by starting to understand how things within their life have impacted their behaviours, belief systems, and impacted them as a person, leading them to not live a life that's authentic to them. But one of the major ways that a spiritual awakening happens is crisis. And that is a crisis of a time where you hit such a low that you don't think you're ever going to get out of that. And that's not a low for a week. This is a low where your life feels like it has no meaning. Your life feels like you have no one within it. It's a crisis point because you are being given two doors. You are being given the door of change, of recognizing that either you need to heal from some things, you need to do some things different. You're being given a door to a journey of self-understanding and self-awareness. Not an easy door, but you're being offered that door. Or you're being offered the other door, which is a door of doing the same of what you're doing, but expecting a different outcome. Because this is life, isn't it? We do the same stuff day in, day out, the same behaviours, but we want something different. We want a better relationship, but we don't know how to manage relationships better. We want better friends, but we don't know how to meet healthier friends. We want a better job, but we don't know how to leave the job we're in or raise our qualification skills so that we are able to bring in that better job. That awakening is coming because the universe and the divine are saying to you, enough is enough is enough. You know that song? Don't know the words, but that's what it's saying. It's saying to you, if you keep living this way, you're never going to be any happier than what you are now. And you may go through periods of happiness, but even that leads to numbness. How many times do I hear my clients saying to me, my daughter's just given birth and while I'm really happy, I also feel really flat. Or my son's getting married and I kind of have no real emotion about it. I'm starting to lose what real emotion feels like. Because when you live a life with your eyes closed, asleep is what we call it. When you live your life asleep, you are living your life in a way that you're in denial by a lot of things because you don't know any different. You're not questioning anything. You're not making choices. You're just flowing and doing whatever the universe says. If that's been your friend for 20 years, no matter how toxic they are, you're just going to tolerate it. Well, they've been my friend for 20 years. You're not reflecting or looking or communicating differently because you want different. You'll be unhappy with your husband or wife or partner and be like, wow, it's never going to change. But it can. And when we are asleep prior to an awakening, you're living your life on autopilot. You're living your life conditioned by your childhood. If your childhood has been one of emotional disconnection, so emotionally unavailable parents, parents that shouted, parents that were controlling, parents that were aloof or addiction, you will have this in your adulthood until it's healed. Whether it's from you or whether it's from people around you, you will have this within your life. You'll have chaos. There'll be chaos or drama of some kind until you realise and understand that while you're asleep, the impact of your childhood is affecting you. An awakening is being brought to you to say, start looking and becoming consciously aware of your life. Doing some inner child work maybe, and people go, oh, I haven't got time for that. I don't want to do that. I've got too much on my plate. But what people are not realising is, if you don't make time for these kind of things, when you are moaning that you're unhappy, you have to ask and be accountable for yourself that you're not doing anything about it. People see these things as hobbies. People see these things as esoterical book rap, and people see these things as, oh, well, that's, another fandangled thing, but it's not. This is a way to greater healing. An awakening is a way to a different life. If you are suffering depression, anxiety, behaviours that are consistent but not helpful, coping mechanisms that are not helpful, if you are suffering illness or lots of pain, then there's things that are suppressed within you that need to be faced. And while you're asleep prior to awakening, you're not going to face them. So you're always going to experience the symptoms, because they're symptoms. Illnesses, mental health, bodily illnesses, chaos externally, that's all symptoms. They're signs of greater things within your life. And you can't heal signs. You can't heal the symptoms. You can only ever start to work to heal the cause. So an awakening comes to those, and it could be just you end up going through a deep depression and you don't know why. And that is coming to you because it's the universe and the divine saying to you, there is a better way of living. That living this way is not conducive with a happy, healthy life for you. It's a way of saying something needs to change. And you can ignore it. Oh, you can ignore it. But if you ignore it, you're ignoring the fact that you can have a happier life. If you ignore it, when you start to say, my life's crap and it's never going to change, you have to sit in the accountability again that you're not changing this. And I don't mean to be brutally honest when I say these things. I mean to empower people to say that you do have more choices than you ever believe. This society leads you to believe you have no choices, that we are here just to accept everything that's thrown our way, but that's not the case. We are here to learn to think differently, learn to deal with things differently, learn to build resilience, learn to find love where love is not growing, learn to let go of what we're holding on to that's hurting us. That is what an awakening is for. And in the next video, I will be telling you how to start your awakening, so I don't want to be touching too much upon that now. I just want to tell you, if you are going through a period of time, that could have been years, where you feel like nothing is changing, that you're sad, that you're down, that you are going through and resisting an awakening. Because an awakening is there for you to open the door. It's not going to open the door for you. And if you don't open that door and you resist it and you stay in that room, that's almost like staying in a cell when the cell door is open but saying, I'm scared of the big wide world, so I'd rather stay here. But then saying, I don't want to stay here because I don't get to see the beautiful outdoors. It's contradictory, isn't it? And we live our lives so contradictorily. We live in a cell with the door open, but so afraid of the outdoors, so afraid of what we don't know, that we'd rather sit in the uncomfortableness of what we do know, but then be angry at ourselves because we are uncomfortable. But we are choosing that. Choosing the other door is choosing a new way. It's choosing to connect to people like myself. It's choosing to watch videos on awakening. It's choosing to start implementing small goals. They don't have to be big. When I went through my awakening in 2015, I had my fourth daughter. Well, my fourth child, my second daughter. I was in one of the most happiest places of my life. I had been in a domestically abusive relationship time and time again, where addiction was prevalent, where violence was prevalent. And I had chosen to get out of that relationship because I knew, and I'd chosen to get out of each relationship because I knew I wanted more. I knew for my children I wanted a better life. So I started, and I was a reader. I'd been a reader since my 20s, and I'd started when I was 15. So I knew about evolution and growing and making better choices. But I never knew about self-development and self-growth, and I never knew about shadow work and inner child work. And quite often, an awakening can come when you are in one of the happiest places of your life. Sometimes because you can't live in denial forever. And while we do go through happy periods, whether we're depressed or not, nothing lasts unless you understand it and worked for it. And when I was in one of the happiest places of my life, and I was so excited for the birth of our baby, it was planned, she was planned, the pregnancy was amazing, and I'd never had the support I'd had. I'd never met a partner that had given me unconditional support in the way that he had. Oh, he had his red flags, which I ignored. But there was something there, and I will talk about twin flames later, which he is. And I had strep B, and my daughter contracted meningitis, and I contracted sepsis. This ultimately led to psychosis. And I had suffered mental health. I was diagnosed with bipolar at 18. So I had suffered mental health my whole life, but this was on another level. And not all awakenings start this way. Awakenings, as I say, can start from the death of a loved one and a loss of self. An awakening is because of a loss of self. But mine had to be so dramatic because I ignored every other mini awakening that had come. I ignored it. I had missed every other chance to step upon my awakening. I had suffered mental health, and I had been through crises before, but I took medication and I averted them. I just flew through them in the sense where I got through it as best I could, and then I went to the happy part of my life. But it kept on happening. It was cycling. And obviously the universe had accepted that unless it was going to give me something huge, I was not going to wake up to this awakening. Even though I was a reader and knew about spiritual stuff, I didn't have an awareness of the concepts of working inward, of really understanding the need to do this inner work, the need to change your life. And obviously my awakening had to happen so big because I needed to learn so much, because this is part of my soul journey. And not everyone's awakening has to be so deep like that, but it will be as effective and it will be as painful. And when I was in hospital and was going through psychosis, and mental health teams were not working with me, and my parents were told about how serious it was but refused to come in, I had a trigger, and that trigger triggered one of the greatest rejections that I'd ever felt by my parents. I'd grown up in an abusive home. My dad emotionally, physically, and at times sexually abused. And I had suppressed that trauma for a long, long time. And it wasn't until I went through this psychosis and I was triggered by that deep sense of rejection did suddenly this anger that I felt for my parents grew so big. I had felt anger for my parents my whole life. I couldn't connect with my parents. I couldn't get on with them. I tried whenever I needed them there was this trauma bond that I would reach out to them and expect them or hope that they were going to help me, but they gave me very, very little back, and always made me feel bad for everything that was occurring in my life, that I was a problem, the black sheep. That's a whole nother video. But it triggered that in me, and what it did is it triggered all my childhood stuff, and it took me on a journey of really delving into how my trauma of my parents affected me. And how that happened is, when I come home from the hospital, I could not leave my bed. I couldn't see people. I had a disorder called derealization and depersonalization. And obviously with the psychosis, I constantly was thinking I was going to kill my daughter, or I was going to do something silly. I was planning to unalive myself multiple times a day. And I spent 6 months screaming for help with the mental health system, trying to get into private counselling, being changed from medication to medication. And when my daughter was 6 months old, and I had spent every day, I was meditating 3 or 4 times a day. I was unable to drink caffeine, I was unable to eat chocolate. Anything that had the slightest bit of caffeine in it would set another panic attack off. And I was in an absolute state of disconnection, living my life with insomnia, crying hysterically all the time, unable to spend time with my children. And when I was able to spend time with people, I was putting a front on, or so disconnected that my body was there but my mind was not. And I started to have so many memories of my childhood and some of the abuse that had come back that I couldn't process. And I was starting to go to sleep with memories, wake up with memories, and starting to really be guided by this inner force that something was wrong, that I didn't attribute my childhood to abuse. And this is really weird, and this is what I say to so many of my clients, that you can grow up in an abusive home, but you'll never label it abuse because it was so normalised to you that it didn't feel like abuse, but it abused our nervous systems. It led us feeling less than, it led us feeling attacked, it led us growing up with unhealthy coping mechanisms because our parents had unhealthy coping mechanisms. And you don't have to come from a home where you were physically or mentally abused, but if you have an emotionally unavailable parent, an angry parent, a parent who has addiction, a parent who shouts all the time, a parent who doesn't know how to deal with conflict, a parent who's passive aggressive, which majority of parents were because they were unhealed, you will have had some trauma from that, because that's not how we're here to live. We're here to connect, we're here to love, we're here to thrive. Unfortunately, sadly, it hasn't been passed down through generations. This is why we're here to heal it. We're not necessarily here to judge our parents for it, because some parents just didn't know any different. And as they've got older, understand that, wow, I could have been different, but it was a learning journey for them too. And then there's some parents that never ever want to take accountability, will always blame the child, and never believe any of their behaviours were toxic even though they were. And there's different categories for different parents. This is why I don't like to judge parents when children have been raised in this environment, unless there is lack of accountability still and abuse is still continuing by controlment or by gaslighting or by manipulation, which is what happened in my family. I can't have contact with my parents because of it. But it led me on a journey, my inner self was leading me on a journey to explore abuse, or explore. I started off exploring the word depersonalization, and that led me to childhood abuse, and I was like, I haven't been abused. And then when I started to see what childhood abuse was, I had suppressed a lot of stuff, physical and sexual, because I didn't want to. And then as it was coming up and I was starting to understand and see the gravity of it. Now, not every awakening is going to lead you to remember things, but some awakenings are. My awakening led me to the biggest realization that my eyes were open to really what I experienced in my childhood was really, really unhealthy. And actually the reason why I was deemed a mess, a fuck up, mentally unstable was because of the stuff I'd experienced in my childhood, and because of how gaslit I was when I tried to approach healing with my parents in adulthood, when I tried to explain some things and they totally wanted, because their ego is unable to process the fact that it's caused any damage because they're in pain. So for them, they have to be in sources of denial because that's where they're most comfortable. And I'm okay with that now because I get it. But at one point when I needed that validation or felt like I needed it, I didn't get it. But my awakening led me, and everyone's awakening is to lead you to look at your childhood. You may already have blame for your parents. You may already have certain things that you hate or are upset about. But the aid of this is working with someone to start exploring, or even trying to start exploring with inner child work on your own, how it impacted you. And I had to explore how my childhood impacted me, because the only reason we are the way we are as adults is because how we were raised. The environment, social, political, school, grandparents. It's not just our parents. It was our whole environment as a child. Was it conducive to healthy healing? A lot of people have religious traumas. A lot of people have school traumas. They are all traumas that weigh down so heavily. And when I started to research, I started to listen to podcast after podcast. I started to read book on psychology after book. And this is not what everyone's awakening is going to be about. Mine, I'm now a spiritual teacher, so I can understand why my need for knowledge was so great, because I'm here to pass knowledge on. So not everyone awakening is meaning you're going to have to sit there and plow through hundreds of psychology books and listen to every podcast and get your hand on. But it does mean that you do need to source information. It does mean that you do need to source people like myself on YouTube. It does mean that you do need to become inquisitive about your life. Even typing in the word healing on YouTube will bring so much up to start a journey. People say, well, I don't know how to heal, or I won't be able to heal. Healing is more about the commitment to self than it is to sourcing information. If you commit to yourself, to starting a journey of starting to learning to understand yourself, the universe, the divine, beautiful divine will bring you all the knowledge that you need. That's what it did for me. I just had to be open to I want to heal. And bit by bit, I would listen to people's podcasts, I would read books, or I would read a magazine, and there'd be another nugget of information that would lead me to understand more about myself. An awakening is about healing. It's about uncovering who you really are, not the person that you have been made into by your environment. A lot of us are just replicas or extreme other sides of our parents. What do I mean by that? We're either just like our parents, or we try to be the exact opposite because we don't like their behaviour. But when you don't heal something and you just try to counteract it by doing the opposite, you end up in another unhealed place. And I'll give you an example. If somebody's been shouted at their whole life, and then as an adult they say, I don't want to shout at anybody, I don't want to do that, they suppress everything. They don't know how to learn how to deal with conflict or tell somebody how they feel, and because they don't want to shout, they'll suppress it. But they can only suppress it for so long. So then they will have bouts where they get either very shouty and they're shouting, or they get depressed because they can't fathom how to express how they feel. So they're too scared to ever shout, so they say nothing, and they press it down, and you become passive aggressive. You stop talking, you don't answer the phone, you don't text, you snap, you make inadvertent digs, or you have blow-ups where you're really passive and then you blow up and I've had enough and I can't deal with this. And then you think, oh my God, I hate this. Because without healing something, you can't get rid of it. It's energy. I had to learn how to emotionally deal with things, because when I was healing, I was either very shouty or I was very people-pleasy, trying to always counteract the two. By healing it, I learned that I could have my voice And even if people didn't like that, that didn't mean my voice wasn't worthy, but I didn't always need to shout and scream about it. I could come at it by, yeah, I'm going to be assertive, but I'm not going to be really angry. And at times I am angry, and I'm okay with that because I'm human. But I know balance. I know when. I know to love myself if I've slipped into it. And I know how to deal with things in a calmer way. We embody all of it instead of trying to be one or the other, because you can't be one or the other. We have to embody all of it. We have to, the same with conflict. People who have been hit growing up or had conflict constantly with a parent will avoid conflict in adulthood. They'll do everything they can by pleasing or pulling away, and then they will get into conflict because they have to become really assertive, and I'm not letting anyone walk all over me. You'll have periods of time where you're really, really passive, or you will always be really passive, or you'll be really assertive all of the time because you're never letting anyone walk all over you again, or you flip between the two. When you heal it, you can be assertive with what you say. If somebody doesn't accept it, well, that's their problem, but this is how I feel, and you learn healthier ways. You've got to learn to embody it, and awakening is able to look at different things, behaviour, belief systems, attachments, and that's all coming in video number 2. My awakening was one of the most painful times of my life, and at the time, I prayed for either death or to be who I was prior. And I remember saying to the doctor, I just want to be who I was. And the doctor said to me, why would you want that? That person wasn't 100% healthy. You have a chance now. And I didn't know the power of his words at that time. And whether he knew the power of his words at that time, whether he knew about awakening, I don't know. But the power of his words were, why tread a path that you've tread for so long that didn't offer you the happiness and peace that you deserve, when you can tread a new path that, yes, is uncomfortable, but it's also going to bring new insights, new beauty, new awarenesses, and along that journey, you're going to have epiphanies, you're going to have deeper connections, more loving bonds, you're going to love yourself more, you're going to be more compassionate to yourself. So the other path is full of pain, but it's pain you know. And we like to think, I'm used to that pain, so I'd rather take that pain. Whereas the other path is pain, and it's unknown pain, but it's a shorter amount of pain for a shorter period, and it's got the potential to bring you to greater happiness. That other path hasn't. The other path that you've trodden in circles and cycles your whole life isn't going to bring you anywhere different. If you've watched this video and you feel like you're either going through an awakening or you want to incite an awakening, then do look at my next video and do look at what that can bring you. Remember, awakening can be a very drawn out process, or it can be a very quick process. Not meaning your healing is very quick, but meaning it can be a flash in the pan, something goes really, really wrong and your life is in chaos, or it could be that you have been in long-term depression for a while. And if you've been in long-term depression for a while, you've got to have to start to incite your awakening. The other awakening could be one where people naturally flow for it. Something great happens, they start to realise, instead of going through a midlife crisis, they use that as their midlife crisis and they question everything and start to believe nothing. But those people who've been in long-term depression for a very long time, because they've been so disconnected because of their childhood, you're going to have to learn to incite an awakening. You're going to have to learn to start to walk towards the door yourself so that you can open that door. I do have a Facebook group I do have a Facebook page called The Spiritual Hub, where I do lots of lives on of this. I do have a spiritual awakening healing group, so it's called the Soul Healing Tribe, and that is a £3.49 subscription. I do have that on Facebook, if anyone wants to join that. But if not, and you just want to follow this journey on YouTube where I'm bringing healing and awareness to you, then please follow me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Pop me a comment underneath, connect with me, tell me your story. When we share the things that we have been through, it has the ability for us to start to see things differently. Remember, you are so used to seeing things in one way that without somebody else encouraging you to see it differently, you will always see it one way. And for example, if we look at a building the same way every day, we won't know what the rest of that building looks like. It does not mean that the rest of that building does not exist. It means that we've got so used to looking at one side of it that we take it at face value. What you don't realise is you could walk around the front of that building and you could find that it's a cathedral. You could find that a cathedral is right next to it and there's so much beauty. Until you take paths unknown, you will never know what there is to know. Thank you for watching.